Welcome back to the C-Suite. I'm Danielle Jaworski. On the show, we've talked before about this great resignation and women leaving the workforce in really high numbers during the pandemic. Our next guest is going to be talking about a different perspective about what may be happening that's causing this shift and the resignations to happen. Tammy Adams is a coach and grief recovery specialist, and she's going to be talking to us about not necessarily the great resignation, but the great awakening. Welcome, Tammy, to the show.
Thank you, Danielle. It's nice to be here.
So when you talk about this great awakening, can you share a little bit more about what awakening means and what it can mean to women?
Well, I think in the past, traditionally, women have sat back and looked at their careers, but it usually happens midlife. 40s, 50s, women tend to sit back and reflect on their life and see if there's changes that need to be made. So that's kind of a natural transition that seems to have happened historically. In reference to the Great Awakening, there seems to be a shift that's happening really on a global level. People are really starting to look within to see what is their internal beacon telling them to do. They don't seem to be looking for that external approval anymore. And many people really don't understand it. But this drive for change is coming from inside of them. And it's much different than that natural transition we used to see. People just no longer are content to accept the status quo.
And for people who are potentially going through this awareness shifting, what can that look like or feel like?
Well, I think the biggest thing is there needs to be a sense of awareness because this is happening internally. Like, it's not a conscious decision like it was in the past. And so they need to be prepared for what's about to happen. And my line always is, change is messy in the middle. And I liken it to having a baby. So when we're pregnant, we're set up for this euphoric experience. It's like, oh, you're going to have a baby and you're going to be a mom. And, this is going to be the most beautiful experience that you will ever have. Well, nobody really prepares us for what that massive change is going to look like. There's physical changes, obviously, that take place in a woman's body, but no one talks about how we're sleep deprived, we're exhausted, we're overwhelmed, we're scared, we don't know what we're doing. And that's the best example I can give for what women are stepping into. There's this really positive side of it because they've found the courage, to walk away from that job and really follow their heart. That's the really positive part of this change. But the downside of the change is people really aren't prepared for the isolation that may come, the lack of confidence that might be there, and the fact that those closest to us, those people that we've counted on all our lives to support us, they really think we've lost our minds. And I don't say that lightly because a lot of people experience that. And that's where that feeling of isolation comes from. They seem to be taking this journey alone. And while it appears that way, it actually is, because this great awakening that we're talking about is a very unique journey.
For women who feel like they're resonating with what you're saying, this great awakening or becoming more aware, it equals change. And change can be scary because you don't know what's on the other side. You can't predict. It's not understandable. It's not known. So, what can women do to start feeling more comfortable or at least not fear the change so much?
Well, again, I think it comes with awareness. I know I keep kind of bringing it back, but we can't deal with anything unless we're aware of what it is that we're facing. So, some of the things I would say to them is be kind to yourself while you're on this journey and be patient. Change doesn't happen overnight, it's something that takes place over time. And that awareness or acceptance that people may not understand. Use this time to really learn and settle into this change. And I think the most important thing is during this change period is to resolve the past, to grieve what is changing and what is being lost, so that they are able to step into this place of change with confidence and accept what's coming.
Mhm. And for women who are saying, okay, so I can do this, I can start to forgive myself, I can be, a lot have a little more self-care and kind to myself. I think something that you said was really key is the fact that it's a journey, it's going to take time. So it sounds like that means you can't rush this probably as much as you would want to rush and just get through this messy middle and the change.
Yes. And I think one of the things I want to leave the audience with is when you really embrace this change and accept what's happening, something magical does happen. That purpose, that sense of connection, that understanding of who you are really starts to come to the forefront. And once you really embrace your autonomy, it becomes very empowering. And the magical part is your tribe shows up, that career shows up, that purpose is there, and you walk into life with the confidence that you didn't have in that previous career, that previous way you were.
And how important is it for someone to be very clear on what it is that they want as they're going through this awakening process?
I think from a coach perspective, the most important thing is to understand who you are at your core. When I'm coaching people, I always start with a personality assessment because it takes the guesswork out of those next steps and it gives you a roadmap to follow. And while it's not step one, step two, step three, you actually have a really solid understanding of your values, your stressors, your motivators, all of that sort of thing. So, if you're asking me my best piece of advice, step one would be to do a personality assessment and really find out who you are at your core to take the guesswork out of it. And the second thing that I would strongly recommend is to work with a professional in order to process the grieving process, to complete the past, so that they are really honestly able to step into this place of change with confidence.
And for anyone who is a leader, are there signs that they might be able to see, well, in employees who may be kind of on this journey now and who may not even realize it? And how can they help them?
I think that's a really tricky question because it doesn't always show up in an obvious way. This is where a leader really has to know their team because it doesn't necessarily show up in a lack of performance. You know, they can still perform their job really well. This is where it's key that that the leadership really understands their people, and sometimes a leader can see the strengths in someone else that that person can't see. And so, if they can zone in on those strengths and ask the questions and guide, they may not necessarily lose them in their company. They just may lose them in that position and they may have to shift over to another part of the company. I think companies are so afraid they're going to lose their employee. Well, if they don't support them on this personal journey, they will lose them anyway. So this is a way of keeping them, in the company, in the organization, but it creates a win-win for both of them.
And what are some benefits? So if someone is going through this right now, they're in this messy middle or they're just starting on the journey, what are some benefits that at the end that they can almost look towards and be a beacon to help them kind of get through where they are right now?
Well, I think there's a sense of inner peace. A lot of our anxiety in life comes from the gap between who we are and who we're trying to be. So you narrow that gap. And so you're able to step into this place of empowerment. You have this sense of peace that you didn't have before. You have a confidence that wasn't there. I think the biggest thing is you are able to set an example for someone else to follow you. And that takes away that Western culture kind of inference that this is a selfish act. It's not selfish. If you can step into your authenticity, you then give someone else permission to do the same. You then become the leader.
Well, thank you, Tammy, for giving others the permission to have this conversation if they feel like they've been going this on this awakening journey and they maybe didn't know what it was until now. So thank you for being here on the show and talking about this.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Thanks for the invitation.